You are listening to Season 4 of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, a 10-part series in which hardware wallet makers and breakers get interviewed. Before I introduce this episode's guests, let's hear a few words from the show's sponsors. LXMI is a European cryptocurrency exchange whose name is inspired by Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of wealth, good fortune, and prosperity. It's one of the regulated and legal cryptocurrency exchanges. On LXMI, you can buy bitcoins with most fiat currencies, and you can also do trading with top altcoins. They follow the not your keys, not your bitcoins philosophy with their integrated non-custodial wallet, which helps you manage your own private keys. So if you're into trading, then you don't have to worry about having your crypto frozen by whatever political decisions, since you're empowered to hold and move your coins whenever you wish. It's great to have new players like LXMI that respect your financial sovereignty. LXMI is launching in 2020, and for more information, please check out lxmi.io. If you're not into trading, it's recommended to move your coins to a hardware wallet or some other form of cold storage, and in this episode, you're about to find out why. Please keep in mind that this is just an ad for a sponsor of this show. It's not meant to serve as financial advice, and you're responsible to do your own research before buying anything and act according to your own decisions. Embrace your financial sovereignty with agency and precaution. Hey you! Looking for the simplest way to get started sending Satoshis on the Lightning Network? Then sign up with your social account on BottlePay now. BottlePay is your premium Lightning service for unfairly cheap and effortless Bitcoin payments. It is powerful enough to offer all of the payment features you need, while also being simple enough for no-coiners to understand. No more confusion and headaches. Send Satoshis instantly to anyone on a supported social network in a couple of clicks. Log in today at bottle.li and receive 1,000 free Satoshis to get you started sending and receiving Bitcoins. Follow the steps to become a power user and earn even more. Head over to bottle.li and get started now.
Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 2 of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I am Vlad, and today I have two guests who work and have developed ShiftCrypto Security, one of the rising companies in the hardware wallet market. And just in case you didn't get accustomed to the format by now, the whole season is going to be about hardware wallet makers and their breakers. And the names of my guests are Douglas Bakkum, or Bakkum, as it's pronounced in German, and Jonas Schnelli, who is also a Bitcoin core developer, and this is going to be very interesting. So hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Vlad. Hey, Vlad. Thanks for this opportunity.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Because there's a lot going on, and I noticed that the BitBox02 is getting some traction. I noticed that it's not quite the holiday season, but on Black Friday, I saw that Blockstream had some sort of offer with the BitBox02, the Ledger, and the Trezor. So you're basically positioned on their podium. And also there was this video of somebody who tried to order more than 4 devices and was not able. So if you have this kind of limitation in place, I presume that you're starting to have a demand for the product.
Yeah, it's slowly picking up. So we just released our BitBox02 hardware wallet, which is our second version device, I guess just a couple of months ago. And so we spent a lot of time in the last years developing it, and we're quite happy with the response we've gotten so far. And we're looking forward to keep promoting it, keep hearing feedback, and keep trying to improve on it.
And Douglas, as far as I know, you're the creator and designer of the original BitBox, right?
Yes. So again, the BitBox02 is our second version. The first one I created and designed myself a number of years ago, about 4 years ago now. And so I do have quite a bit of technical background to be able to do that, of course. But right now my role is the CEO. So fortunately and unfortunately, I don't get so much chance to do the technical work anymore.
Okay. That's useful to know. So my first question for both of you is, why should Bitcoiners buy a hardware wallet? Because when you ask some security specialists, they're going to say that it's better to just use a paper wallet or some other cold storage method. And some people even say that it's better to get a general purpose item that you cannot distinguish by manufacturer.
Yeah, there's different layers or different thoughts about what's most secure. I mean, in general, if you're going to use the paper wallet, so where do you generate your entropy? Do you going to roll dices, which is really complicated, or do you going to use a computer to generate the paper wallet, which during the moment of your generation of that actual seed, you may be compromised at that point. So that's A, the critical moment. And then B, what if you want to spend your coins? Assume you have created a secure paper wallet that at some point you want to sell the coins or send them forward. What are you going to do with the paper wallet? So you need to enter the seed again into your computer or eventually an insecure device. And if that device is compromised, the funds may be redirected to the attacker. And hardware wallets, they come with very limited attack surface. They have almost no IOs, so it's like secure on the hardware end. And it's also having usually a non-Linux dedicated operating system, which is like super small amounts of lines of codes compared to, Android with probably 10 millions of lines of code just for the kernel. And I guess by limiting that, we can make sure, or hardware wallets can make sure it's like the best or the least amount of attack vectors possibly.
Okay. I know that generally hardware wallets tend to be very secure unless you have some sort of physical access to them. And maybe that this applies to any security device. It's safe until somebody who is very skilled and knows exactly what to do gets their hands on them, and possibly that's where the compromise can happen.
It's always, the more money you're willing to spend to compromise a device, the more likely is it that you're going to access the secrets on it. There is nothing unhackable. That's just not possible. So it's like how secure you make things. So you can take one hardware wallet, but then you can reuse multiple hardware wallets in a kind of a split portfolio situation or in a multi-sig. But at the end, it's everything is hackable. It's just very complicated, and the BitBox02 also protects from physical theft. So it's like we're trying to make it impossible for physical theft to access the funds.
So if a user wants to buy a hardware wallet and they're not quite decided, they don't know what to do, why should they go for the BitBox02? What is special about it as compared to the competition?
Yeah, I can try to answer this one. And so there are a number of options and more options coming out to the market. And I think in general, that's a good thing. There's solid competition. I think it's a good thing to have, if you have a lot of funds, it's probably a good idea to have a couple of different hardware wallets just in order to reduce some of the manufacturer risk if a problem happens in one of them. But for our hardware wallet in particular, we do think it has some advantages over the competition, some strong advantages, both in terms of usability, also in terms of security, which I can touch on very quickly. So usability, When we designed the BitBox02, we tried to take a lot of lessons from our BitBox01 and apply them to the BitBox02. In terms of usability, one of the most popular features of our first hardware wallet was the micro SD card. And so we focused a lot on simplicity, and the micro SD card is one of the best ways to do that. What that refers to specifically is when you first create a hardware wallet, you need to handle the backup safely. And the common way to do that is with this mnemonic word list. And so you write down 12 or 24 words onto a piece of paper, then you have to re-enter it into the device in order to check it, and so on. And the feedback we got from new users and our resellers is that this is a quite complicated process. They call it mnemonic anxiety, where users, especially new users, they don't really understand the concept, and so it's really stressful during this whole process that can take 20 to 30 minutes to write down each letter correctly, and so on and so on. And so with the micro SD card, we eliminate the need for that, where the backup is created instantly on the SD card. And so concept of a backup is really easy to understand, and just saves a lot of stress during the whole process. And so you can set it up. You can also recover a wallet very quickly. With the BitBox02, for more expert users or the people I guess more comfortable handling mnemonics, we also do offer the option to display the mnemonic on the screen and to record it down onto paper. So that's one way in terms of usability. I think one of the unique things with our second hardware wallet also is the user input. And so we have touch sliders on the sides of the device, and those things allow different types of gestures, so a tap, slide, hold, things like that. Allows a lot of flexibility there, and we think we can do a lot of really interesting UX with that. And also having the sliders on the side of the device instead of over the screen, your finger's not in the way of the screen, so it's a bit better usability experience that way. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on the uniqueness, and we think also in terms of the different things you need to do on a device, such as password entry or scrolling through data, that we can do this in a much more efficient and even fun way. And so we're quite happy about the response to that from the initial users so far. In terms of security, when we had our small meeting in Berlin, we talked about it a little bit. I'll try to summarize very quickly. I guess, looking at Ledger and Trezor, I think they're the main market leaders at the moment. They do security, or their security architecture is a bit different, I guess kind of extremes, and we try to take the best of both worlds. So Trezor, for example, is open source, which is a really great thing, but they use a general purpose microcontroller, which is not designed for security. That's okay, but it makes it a bit easier for an attacker to access secrets or data on the device if they do physical theft. Ledger, on the other hand, does use a secure element, which is specifically designed to prevent physical access when someone steals a device. That's a very great thing, but the issue there is in order to run code on the secure element, they have to sign an NDA with the manufacturer, and so the code is closed source. Important parts of the code are closed source. The problem with this is that in order for a secure element to be labeled a secure element, you have to, the manufacturer has to go through a certification process where it can take a year or more in time. It can take $1 million to go through this, so it's very costly kind of setup. And in the past, it's been reported that manufacturers do not have the incentive to fix bugs that happen. And it's inevitable that bugs will happen. And so, if these things are used in ATM cards and stuff like that, where it's probably okay, it's probably an acceptable level, but when it comes to cryptocurrencies where one small bug could cause your transaction to fly away into the ether and not be recoverable, we think this is just a no-go. And the reason that the manufacturers aren't incentivized to fix bugs is in order to change the code, which is oftentimes at the hardware level. They would need to do a chip redesign. They need to redo the certification process, so another year to market, another $1 million. And so they have a tendency to just ignore these problems. And, it's to a point now where, the quality of the chips are good, but, even if you have a 1 in a million possibility of a bug happening in some side case or edge case, that still means irreversible loss of funds to people. And in my opinion, that's just a no-go. And so the BitBox02, we try to take the best of both worlds. So we do use a general purpose microcontroller where all of the code on it is run open source. And we use only the most well-vetted cryptographic libraries to do that. But we also combine that with the secure chip. And the secure chip we use purely for securing the physical access to the device. And so this is also why we try to, the threat scenario of theft is also something we protect against.
Okay, because when I tested it for my Bitcoin Magazine review, which you should also be reading if you're getting informed, what I liked about it was that within the user interface, you were able to connect your full node and also enable a function which allowed you to have UTXO control. I think it's called coin control in the interface.
Yes. Yeah.
So these two options, even though they might sound banal or something that should be there, they're not actually in the interfaces of Trezor and Ledger. So that's something that I really appreciated. And what I like.
Good point. It's purely on the software layer, so it has not too much to do with the hardware itself, but it's part of our user experience cycle. And I think especially coin control, the control of the UTXO, so I consider that very essential because I don't want to link with change. So what coin control allows you is like forward a single received amount to, let's say, an exchange if you don't want to have a change address, which could be bad for privacy, or if there is taint UTXOs. There's a lot of taint going on with people sending small amounts to larger addresses so they can track you better. And usually normal wallets will also take those UTXOs and spend those coins as well. So manual coin control, I think this is really how it should have been from the beginning. And automatic coin selection is something that people should have been enabled intentionally.
Yeah, and you also had the batch 32 support from day one, which is something that took other manufacturers a long time to implement. But in regards to coin control, I think it manages to fix and address one of the design issues of Bitcoin. Because when you send somebody any amount, they can see everything, even in terms of how much you have and how much people who sent you their Bitcoins had. And they can track all of this information all the way to whoever they want to identify. So if you have, for example, 50 Bitcoins and you want to send 0.1 to somebody, you don't want them to see that you have 50 because nowadays that's a lot of money. And if you have just a small UTXO which enables you to send that amount, for example, you have a 0.2 UTXO, you're only going to see that, and that's very useful.
Yeah, I mean it's not a mixer, so there's still a linkage to your formal receiving, but you can choose which ones you want to use, which is like a huge benefit in terms of where you have received funds and which ones of those you're going to spend, because otherwise your wallet doesn't make any difference between where you got money from, and this could be hurtful for your privacy.
Okay, I think the next part of the interview is going to be the toughest one, because I want to see something nice about your competition, and we're going to break this down by manufacturer. So we begin with Trezor because they were the first players on the market.
Yeah. So just to take one step back, so I appreciate you also listing some of the other the features of the wallet. I just wanted to mention one other thing is that our desktop app is now also a mobile app. So for Android, we released a beta version, which I think is quite cool. So our device itself has a USB-C connector, so you can plug it directly into modern Android phones. And we'd be really happy if our existing users can go check that out and give us some feedback so we can get it out of beta. So just, sorry for the quick plug. And then to come into the next question, say something nice about our competitors. So I think, I would say this is not so hard of a thing to do. And I think in any young field, and cryptocurrencies, hardware wallets especially, are a young field, it's a very important thing for the competitors to kind of look out for each other. Because in this sense, you know, what's the saying? Where a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that really applies in this current field. And so we're also quite happy to make good relationships with our competitors and you know, try to improve our offerings in all ways for everyone. With respect to Trezor, we've had a lot of great relationships with them. What really great thing, of course, is their open source nature. They really stick to the ideals around that. Really great community interaction. We've done some responsible disclosures with them, and it's been a really great process. So I'd say they're quite professional along that on that end. And so again, I think we kind of share the ideals of making, you know, keeping everything open source, really contributing to the community. Of course, we have business models that compete, where we try to sell hardware to customers. But in the end, we think improving the whole ecosystem will just be a benefit for everyone, including both of ourselves and the users in the community.
Can you also say something that you don't like about Trezor?
So this is the hard part. Let's see. I guess, yeah, if forced, I would say I think they do a really great job. I think, you know, the hardware they build is really nice. The app is really nice. I would say one of the negatives is that theft is not part of their security model for the hardware, and I hope that they're working on solutions to that in the future.
Okay, let's move on to Ledger. You'll have to say something nice about them and something that you don't like.
Sure. So Ledger, I think quite respectable company. The market leaders in the field, so they're really driving you know, a lot of adoption and consumer pickup. I think one of the best things about them is their Ledger Donjon. Charles, who's leading that, is a really great guy. And again, I think he shares these ideals of the rising tide lifts all ships. And so he's also very interested in our communication to support each other to improve things. And the Ledger Donjon, if people don't know, is a specialized, I guess, white hat hacker kind of enclave that's an independent part of Ledger. And they do a lot of really great work, have a lot of great experts in order to look at the security of themselves, of course, but also their competitors and related fields. And I think that's a really great asset for the whole ecosystem. As far as things you don't like, I guess that's a bit easier. Can use the stereotypical one that they're using the secure element, which means part of their code has to be closed source, which I talked about a bit earlier.
Okay, that was easy. And think about it. I think the people on Twitter who buy products and then compare are a lot more toxic and a lot meaner than actual you people who are the executives and the creators of the devices. I feel like there is some sort of spirit of camaraderie, maybe. But before I jump to conclusions about that, let me ask you, because some people say it's a Trezor clone of sorts. I had the first interview of this season with the CTO of Shapeshift. So what do you think about the KeepKey? Something good and something bad?
Yeah, so KeepKey, I guess originally they were a Trezor clone a number of years ago, and I think they weren't shy about advertising that and talking about it and really trying to take the Trezor model. And again, this is, I think Trezor's okay with it. The whole open, that's why their code is open source, so other people can improve on it. And they took that code to make a better, or try to make a better, I guess, UX in terms of hardware. But naturally in time, things do diverge. And so I wouldn't necessarily call them a Trezor clone anymore. In time, as you have your own hardware platform and your own devs, things will diverge and you'll end up making different design decisions. And so the KeepKey, I would say in that sense, the positives and negatives are similar to Trezor. So the negative in the sense that they don't have the secure chip inside, so the threat model doesn't include theft. The positive is, I guess, since they got bought by Shapeshift, they have quite nice usability in terms of the integration with Shapeshift, which is quite a nice thing. That's something that we're also interested in exploring.
Okay, now comes the harder part. What do you think about the Coldcard? Because they don't like you, as far as I know.
They used to like us, and so I think they still like us, but we'll see. I guess you'll have an interview with Rudolfo later, assuming. So Coldcard, I think they do a really great job of they have a really well-defined target market, which is the people who care mostly about security and willing to sacrifice usability. And so that brings up immediately one of the negatives. So usability is a challenge when using their device, just because you need to have a bit of more expert level knowledge. And that's due to their design choices. They did that on purpose. And so on the other hand, it's really optimized for security in a lot of ways, which is a great thing. And I guess the issues with why you say they don't like us, I'm not sure if we'll get into this later or not, but it has to do with responsible disclosure that we made to them. And I would say probably there was some miscommunication along the lines of what responsible disclosure actually really meant in the end, and how that process would play out. I guess they're kind of a newer player on the market, so the protocols in place for what steps to go through were kind of maybe not completely in place. And so when we did make our responsible disclosure, there was some kickback from them about whether or not the severity level was really what we think it is, and so on and so on. And these are all things that we've gone through in the past also, and Trezor and Ledger have gone through in the past when first dealing with security reports and things like that. I think it's just it's a natural part of the game, and having a good bug bounty program in place and getting high quality feedback from there's some really excellent brains in the field, which you'll have on your interview course in the future, that really know ways to hack stuff. And like Jonas said earlier, nothing's unhackable. And so the thing that we need to do as hardware wallet manufacturers is be really receptive to that and fast responsive. And they were receptive and responded really fast and put out a fix really fast. And really be able to, be receptive to that and take that and improve the products.
So how do you comment on the fact that the BitBox02 and the Coldcard MK3 use the same secure chip?
Yep.
It's a coincidence.
So I can't say, what their full design decisions are. So the idea of, how we call this dual chip approach. So having both a general purpose microcontroller and a secure chip, that started, I guess we're the first ones to do that about 4 years ago with our first BitBox. You can argue about the way we implemented it was maybe not ideal, but we kind of started that. And then with the second version, BitBox, and the Coldcard, they use the same architecture, the same chipsets. And so I think, in our opinion, it made the most sense as far as the security architecture. And I think, if you research the different chips that are available and things like that, it's not too hard to come to your own conclusion that this is a good approach. And so I think that both of us using the same approach with the chipset kind of maybe co-validates our design choices. And so I'm quite happy that they're doing that.
Okay. Is there any other hardware wallet manufacturer that you think should be mentioned in this section before we move on with another question?
No, this is the hard question. You put me on the spot because I don't want to make anyone left out feel bad. So I'll say probably it makes sense to not list anyone in particular, but there are a number of other hardware wallet vendors on the market, a lot of newer ones that came out in the last years. And I don't want to say too much about them. There's some interesting and quite intriguing design choices. But in terms of, promoting them or not, I'd prefer to wait and see, how they do on the market and how they do with hacks and so on and things like that.
Yeah, I think it also needs a lot of time that people analyze the code, people analyze the potential vulnerabilities. All new players, I think they just need to go through 1, 2, 3 years of experience before you realistically can judge them in any ways.
That's fair. So sometimes I feel like this is the golden age of hardware wallets because there are so many manufacturers that just take the GitHub repository, they fork it, they create their own devices. And sometimes they bring some interesting designs. And what I appreciate mostly about hardware wallets is when they look like regular household devices. And something that I like about the BitBox02, by the way, is that it has a mail connector. And I don't know why a lot of manufacturers don't do that because it looks like a USB flash drive when it's not turned on. It makes sense for it to have that mail connector. Plus, some people who are very security-minded will say that the cable that you're using can be compromised. So if you're cutting the cable in the middle, then I guess that's an extra good security step.
Yeah. So the original BitBox01 also had a male connector, USB-A, and the BitBox02 has a USB-C male connector. So originally, a lot of what you say is exactly what we were thinking about before. First of all, cables, they're kind of annoying to carry around, but they could also be compromised by people sticking in some spy microchips inside with some kind of wireless output, which has been done in the past. And so we wanted to not need to use a cable, and we also thought just a cable-free approach is also a lot easier for usability. So you can just plug it directly into your computer or plug it directly into your phone. And so those are some of the design considerations we were thinking about.
But also, we should not forget that we should also ship it with a cable. So people who want to use a cable, there's nothing that stops you even with a male connector. So we have a female-to-male cable for extensions. So it's possible to use a cable, but male was the decision because it's just way more natural to use it with your computer or smartphone.
Yeah, and it looks legit. It looks like a USB flash drive. I think.
And yeah, that's also, I think that's also a feature that, sorry to interrupt, that's also a feature because we think when you travel with such device, you don't want that it looks like a hardware wallet in the first place, because it's also, it can also be problematic if you cross borders and anything like this. So we made it not that you will see our logo or Bitcoin or BitBox on top of that thing in first sight.
Yeah, and I think the Ledger has a very good design because it looks like lots of USB flash drives. But when you look at the connector, you're going to notice that it's female. And I think that can give it away as a hardware wallet. I actually had an entire article where I commented on what the devices look like. And for example, on the Coldcard, I said that it looks like a calculator, but anyone who takes a closer look will notice that the screen is way too small. When you're using a calculator, you want to have more digits for input. And also, you don't have the buttons for mathematical operations. So if you don't have a plus, a minus, a divide, a multiply, then what kind of calculator is it? And that's very noticeable.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool if they come out with a new model with the calculator plausible deniability feature. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess in the end, any border control officer, you can provide them a list of maybe 6 devices, and in case they should seize those devices or look after them. So I think it's even with, the most stealth device, people will recognize it. Trained people will recognize this as a hardware wallet. But I think it's great that naive people will maybe have a harder time to figure out what it is.
Yeah, you don't want to show off. And I think from that perspective, maybe that the Trezor has the worst of designs, as it looks like some kind of remote control for your car. But unless you have a car and you're known to actually use that kind of device, then people will be suspicious.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, let's move on with another question. I feel like this dirty part was so graceful. You said everything that was nice to say. And now let me ask you about the original BitBox and why it was discontinued and what kind of issues that you think it had and have been fixed in the O2 model.
Yeah, so original BitBox, we talked about it a little bit. It's originally called Digital BitBox when it first came out. That's been on the market for over 3.5 years. And we recently discontinued, we didn't discontinue support, we stopped selling it last month. And we will continue support officially for 1 more year, possibly longer than that. And I'd say one of the misconceptions that we realized after the fact is we use the term end of life. And that's a very technical term in retail hardware products. And it doesn't mean that after 1 year from now, the device is just going to die and go away. It doesn't mean that. It just means that there's no guaranteed updates for it after a year from now. But you'll still be able to use it. And so you can still use it with our older apps, or you can still use it with Electrum. It works with Electrum for a number of years now. So just to clarify that. And so then the question is, why did we choose to discontinue it? So it has been, just like every other hardware wallet, it has been, vulnerabilities have been reported on it, but all the vulnerabilities reported on it have been fixed. And so it's not an issue that there's something that's not fixed on it. I would say the issue is more so we felt that in the long run, it wouldn't be competitive on the market because mainly it doesn't have a screen. In addition, not having a screen makes it a bit harder to do the security maintenance. And so what we did without the screen was we had a secure connection to a mobile app. And so using a mobile app, we phrased it as basically a secure, large remote screen. And that worked, but then this introduces another channel, communication channel, where people can attack. And getting that right takes some effort. And so it's also a maintenance issue, like a dev resources issue on our end in order to continue to maintain it. We think, like right now, all the vulnerabilities are fixed, but there could be more vulnerabilities found in the future somewhere with that channel. And so those are I guess the main reasons for discontinuing it. And again, we don't want to leave our existing users, out in the blue. And so we will continue support. And of course, if you have issues with it, do contact us. Do contact us at our own support channels, and we'll try to take care of you like we would anyone else, any of our other customers. So that's the reason it was discontinued. And an additional benefit to that is, time and dev resources are limited. And so if we can put more time into the BitBox02, which we think is a much stronger competitor in the field, and also into our app, trying to make that more usable, try to add features that the users want. We see this as a long-run win in the end for our customers.
Maybe that this will be a stupid question, but is there any kind of backwards compatibility when you back up on a BitBox01 with the SD card to insert it into the O2 and have it work?
Yeah, so no, it's not a stupid question at all. We definitely wanted to do that, but unfortunately it's not the case. And the reason for that is for the BitBox01, I guess the standards for like backups and mnemonics, like BIP32, BIP44, were just coming out. And so when we decided what kind of format we were going to make for the backups, they weren't following the exact standards. We tried to do something we thought made more sense, was more secure, but in the end, the market, hardware wallets and software wallets adopted these other standards. And so when we made the BitBox02, we decided it would be make more sense to have some kind of compatibility with the industry standard. And so the backups are different. So they're not going to be forward compatible or backward compatible. That said, I would say if you switch wallets, I think it's good practice to make kind of, I guess, a fresh wallet. By that I mean sweeping the funds from your old seed, your old hardware wallet, your old software wallet into a new hardware wallet, and then you can be confident that if you throw away or misplace your old hardware wallet because you're not using it anymore, you forget about it, that someone doesn't come along and just take it and can guess your password or social engineer you to figure out the password and then access the funds without you being aware.
Okay. So we previously established that the Coldcard and the BitBox02 have the same secure chip. But how would you compare that chip with the one that's inside the ledger?
Yeah. So I touched on this a little bit earlier when talking about the security, our security architecture versus Ledger. And so just to go into that a little bit more. So the Coldcard and us are very similar. And we are quite different than the Ledger approach. And so the Ledger approach uses a secure element where they actually run a lot of the hardware wallet code onside or inside of that secure element. And this is why, again, with the NDAs and so on, that some of their code is closed source. And so the Coldcard and us, we use the secure chip for a different purpose. We don't run the actual hardware wallet code on it. We're more using it as, I guess, the gateway to authenticate your device or log into your device. And so in that sense, we can use open source, well-vetted cryptographic libraries. For example, we're using the libsecp library that's used in Bitcoin Core, which we think is by far the best and safest cryptographic library. I know just to talk about bugs in libraries. So OpenSSH, OpenSSL is a very, very common, well-used library. But during the development of the libsecp, they found during sanity tests, they found a difference in what the libsecp library produced versus these OpenSSH libraries, the cryptographic libraries. And it turned out that there was a bug in an edge case in the other OpenSSH library. And so many people have looked at this, so much testing has gone into this particular library that, we think to do our users justice, we should be using this. And we think other hardware wallets should adopt it also.
Also, you mentioned the design similarities between the Coldcard and the BitBox02. Mm-hmm. And this might be another dumb question, but is there a compatibility with backups? So you take the SD card from the BitBox and put it in the Coldcard and it just works?
As far as I'm aware, no. I think I'm not exactly familiar with how they're doing like wallet recovery at the moment. But I believe with the Coldcard, you have to enter the mnemonics through the user interface in the screen and not via the backup. But I'm not sure exactly on that point where they're at right now. And so in that sense, the SD card wouldn't just work. But since we're using the BIP standards, then if you export the word list from the BitBox02, then you would be able to import that into Coldcard.
At the time, right now, when we record this, the BitBox02 has been launched on the market for a couple of months, maybe. Mm-hmm. And what is the feature that got most praise from your users when you got feedback?
Yeah, so we've been quite happy with the reviews. We're making a list on our website if other people are interested in getting some third-party opinions on our device. And what I'm maybe most happy about is a lot of great feedback about the user experience, being both simple and even recommended for new users, but then also having the expert features still available so that, some of the things you said, like coin control or connecting your own node to our app, for example, being possible. And so in general, it's maybe not a good idea to try to make a one-size-fits-all solution, but I think we were able to do that with our device, which is quite nice. So it's approachable for new users that don't have a deep crypto knowledge, but it still offers some advanced expert features that people appreciate. The hardware design is also a general point that users appreciate. Its aesthetics, and also, as you mentioned before, its discrete appearance, so that you wouldn't recognize it as a hardware wallet per se. And yeah, it's also important to note we have 2 versions of our hardware wallet out. The hardware itself is the same, but the firmware on it is different. We have a Bitcoin-only version, which has gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we also have a BitBox multi-edition, which also has some support for different altcoins and also U2F second-factor authentication.
All right. So the next 2 questions are for power users. Mm-hmm. And the first one is, what kind of advice would you give to people who decide not to use the BitBox app and go for Electrum or Wasabi?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now the BitBox02 is we're working on an Electrum plugin. At the very beginning, we identified the plugin landscape as one of the problems in the hardware wallet space, because there's a lack of a standard how an existing hot or software wallet can interact with the hardware wallet. So what we right now have is kind of a plugin infrastructure, like Electrum has a bunch of plugins where the plugins are maintained within the code base of Electrum. So that makes it almost impossible for a hardware wallet vendor to control the release cycle. So imagine there's a bug, a critical bug, that makes us knock on the door of Electrum and maybe beg them to do a release, which they could refuse for political reasons or whatever. So the whole plugin infrastructure is not ideal for security in general, and especially in our case with the hardware wallet plugins that could have potential problems. And there is actually, back in 2015, I started to write on a standard how software wallets could interact with hardware wallets. There hasn't been any or a lot of progress in that sense. But there is the library, HWI library, that has been created by a bunch of developers that seems to be the future, a future glue element that could make it easy and possible for software wallets to talk to hardware wallets. Yeah. But right now, we strongly recommend to use our software, it's BitBox02.
Yeah. So that said, we look quite positively at Electrum and Thomas, who's running it. It's a really, really great project. I think they're doing things the right way. And at the moment, our original BitBox does have support. The BitBox02 does not have support yet. But we're working on making that available in the very near future. And also for Electrum, for the HWI library that Jonas mentioned.
Now, this goes back to that discussion that you had on the Stefan Livera podcast, and I don't want to reiterate that, but maybe we can make a short summary. Why is the BitBox02 not as friendly with multi-sig configurations as, for example, the Trezor Model T?
Yes, that's a good point. I mean, if we look at multi-sig has been very much proven on the on-chain side. So it works. The cryptographic assumptions are absolutely bulletproof. But the problem with multi-sig is the whole user experience and the security assumption a hardware wallet makes. So when you create, as an example, when you create a receiving address, you need to have your cosigners XPubs or at least a public key. So if the concept or if the implementation in the hardware wallet firmware has not been made correctly, it could be possible for an attacker to create a fake receiving address, and in the worst case, your coins are locked up with an attacker's pub key, or even you eventually send your coins to the nirvana. So, and also we have one of our employees, Cosper Etter, has just released a vulnerability for Trezor and Ledger that actually can make these funds really set on the risk stack. So I think multisig on the concept in the Bitcoin chain is absolutely sane, but the concept how a hardware wallet has to deal with multisig, that hasn't been really worked out yet. So that's why we haven't implemented and served it to the users right now, and rather worked on the conceptual layers. That's also why we have discovered those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and just to add on that, so Casper did really great work on that, and just a day or two ago, we actually released a blog post describing, it's titled "The Pitfalls of Multisig on Hardware Wallets," and so there's a lot of material there that goes into further depth about why it's not so straightforward to do security with multisig.
Yeah, and the conclusion we currently do, I mean, it's a simple conclusion, but it could be more harmful to use multi-sig currently than use single-sig in certain situations. So before that has been sorted out on the conceptual layer, I think using single-sig is still, or maybe split your funds onto multiple hardware wallets is maybe the better option right now, especially for users without a lot of experience.
I was about to mention your research team because in the last few weeks you have made a lot of disclosures and you have found vulnerabilities in the Coldcard, in the Trezor, and in the Ledger, which is impressive.
Yeah, so this, sorry to interrupt, but just to give some context there. So it's not that we actively sought out to find vulnerabilities in our competitors. It was more so we really want to put multisig into production for our products. And one of the first things we did was look and see how the others did it. And when we did that, we ended up finding a number of vulnerabilities that we responsibly disclosed to each of them. And that's kind of where this came out. And so that's also why all of these responses kind of came out at the same time, is because they were found at the same time. And again, if you check out our blogs, you can find a link in our website, ShiftCrypto.ch. It'll give you a lot more details about each of these situations.
So would you say that the responses that you got were positive?
So the responses from the community, I would say the vast majority were positive. The interaction with Trezor, again, was really, really great, really amazing. Ledger also, in the end, they said that the stuff we disclosed was expected behavior. You can read more about it, but the conversation with them was very good also. Yeah, Coldcard, you had mentioned before, they weren't so happy, I guess, with the severity level that we labeled with some of their vulnerabilities, which is, yeah, and it led to a bit of what happens on Twitter, oftentimes a little bit of a heated Twitter discussion, you can call it that. But in the end, I should say that Coldcard, especially with multisig, probably did do the best job of all of them. And so it's a little interesting to see the, yeah, it's unfortunate it became too heated because in the end, it probably wasn't such a big deal in the end,
So the final question that I have for you, and this isn't the final question of the interview because there are two more on Twitter that people have asked, but the final one that I have for you is about your future plans and what are you planning to do on this hardware wallet market in the future, and how will the BitBox02 evolve in time?
I mean, we first maybe can tap into the BitBox Space project we have started a few months, or is it even a year, longer than a year ago, which is kind of a full node, including a hardware wallet, or we call it the secure element, which is a complete open source project. Also, the hardware might be open to build it on your own, which is kind of a thing we think could be very interesting for a lot of users. And if you haven't read about the BitBox Space project, I think it's totally worth to go to the ShiftCrypto.ch website and read it up. And we have started, or we are in the process of shipping the first beta devices to a bunch of people.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just to expand on that. So we're trying to, I guess, of course, we're interested in developing the BitBox02 further, but we're also interested in expanding our product offerings. And so the base, it's a full Bitcoin node. Eventually, Lightning will be added also. And so we think this addresses a lot of the privacy concerns that are still an issue in Bitcoin especially, whereas hardware wallets solve the security issue. What that means is if you use a hardware wallet, you still, unless you can connect your own full node, which we offer that option in our app, but the vast majority of people don't. And so when you need to check out how many coins you have in your hardware wallet, you have to use a third-party service. Could be us, it could be Trezor Ledger. I'm not saying any of us would actually spy on people, but in the future we could be forced to if a government wants to, forces us to check out someone's specific address. And so if you're using our service to probe the blockchain, basically your whole financial history is exposed, and that's something that people tend to not want to expose. I know there's all this talk about people don't care about privacy anymore. People post everything on Facebook and so on. But one thing they don't really post on Facebook every week is their bank statements, for example. And so I think there are certain things that people do want to have private, and the BitBox space addresses that. As far as the hardware wallet itself, we have a lot of ideas. So multisig, of course, as we mentioned before, is something we want to add on. We want to continue to improve the usability. We're quite happy that people like the usability already, but there's always ways we can continue to improve that. We have the mobile app coming, which a lot of people have given us pretty good feedback on, multi-language support, things like that. But really continuing to improve on the overall user experience, the usability, also try to give different types of services that people need, such as fiat on-ramps and things like that.
All right. So Track Bender from Twitter wants to know where the inspiration came from for your devices, what's behind the BitBox base and tap projects, and what we might expect down the road. So it's similar to my question, but more specific to the product.
Okay, we answered some of the base stuff already, but maybe Jonas, you want to jump in?
I think the base project, it's probably worth to read it up further on our website. But there's a lot of possibilities people can build with it. Is it maybe a mixer that automatically mixes coins? It could be like lightning situations, which HSM. There could be push services that you get like information when you have received coins in a secure way. But in general, for a lot of people, privacy is equally or even more important than the funds themselves, because if you are in a regime where disclosing your financial information can bring you in prison, that could be a situation where privacy is more valuable than the wealth itself. So I think having privacy as an option is super important, and also it's also combined with trust. So if you're using a third-party service, it's not only about privacy, it's also about trust. If you have received coins, they could omit those, they could not show you those, or they could even show you fake coins in terms of unconfirmed incoming UTXOs.
Yeah, and so I guess at a higher level, all of us in our team, Jonas and I especially, but our whole team is quite, motivated by just the whole cryptocurrency revolution. I guess you can use that word, where we think, it's really early right now. A lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the tools still need to be put in place so that it's easier for the whole world to take advantage of the opportunities that cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin present. And so from a company point of view, we really want to give these tools, and we think hardware especially will play a crucial role. And we think hardware is the self-sovereign hardware is the best solution available. And so that includes solving the security needs with hardware wallets, solving the privacy needs with the BitBox space and full nodes, solving usability issues with our BitBox app. And we think, if you look at what makes cryptocurrencies special, it's these great properties like being decentralized, being permissionless, censorship resistant, and so on. And we think if you don't have, self-custody, self-sovereign solutions, if you don't hold your own keys, of course not your keys, not your funds, there can be problems in the long run, in the sense that, if everyone just puts their funds on centralized exchanges, you can ignore all the hacking risks. But this is kind of a slippery slope back into the traditional way of doing things in the financial world. And it's also a slippery slope in the traditional way that governments can exert control. So for example, if you're a crypto company trying to open a bank account, there's a whole bunch of hurdles you have to go through in order to do that. And the government's really, really paying attention to everything. And so these properties that make crypto special slowly fade away. And we think that the only way to prevent that from happening is self-sovereign solutions and decentralized hardware also. And so I guess that's kind of a bigger picture motivation. One of the things in the question also was something we call TEP. What TEP stands for is tamper evident packaging. And so it is a physical object, but it's not electronic circuits. It's a quite simple thing. And one of the biggest issues in hardware wallet field, but also in a number of other fields, is how do you secure the supply chain? And so how do you protect against someone tampering or replacing your device on the way from being shipped to the user? A really great example that came out a year or two ago was with one of Ledger's resellers, where the reseller opened the box, they programmed the device, set up a wallet on it, they changed the instruction manual, and so when the device got to the user, the instruction manual said, "You're all set, your wallet's ready, have fun, go at it." But of course, the reseller then had the private key, so if you put any coins on it, the reseller could just steal it. And so, device attestation, things like that, they help, but they don't solve this particular situation. And so we tried to think of a solution that can solve that, and this tamper evident packaging. Again, we just launched, alpha, so we're shipping some alpha devices for early testers to people, and on our website you can read more about it. The concept is, I'd say, pretty simple, where we have some kind of, it's hard to explain in words, but it's easy if you watch the video. But to try, the concept is we have a little pouch with some small beads in it. You shake it up, and so you can get a lot of entropy in the random pattern of these small beads inside this pouch. And then you vacuum seal this whole thing together with the enclosure and whatever you want to protect inside. And that locks into place what we call a temporary fingerprint, this pattern. We take a photo of that before it leaves our warehouses, and when the user gets it, there's a QR code. They can go scan that in. They can see what the picture looks like through our website, and they can compare, and they can look at this temporary fingerprint, this pattern of the beads in the pouch, and they can see whether or not the device was opened along the way. Because in order to tamper with the device, you'll have to break the vacuum, and once you break the vacuum, the pattern will disappear.
All right, so I don't think the TEP was around the last time I checked your website, but it's definitely interesting. And somebody, Enki Tech, wants to know what your take is on QR codes and if you think this is a future step for hardware developers. I'm not sure what he means, but you possibly know better.
Yeah,
I think I know what he means. Usually the problem is how you get unsigned transactions into your hardware wallet. Most hardware wallet vendors currently use the USB port, so you connect to your computer through USB, and all the hardware wallets consider that as an insecure port, so whatever comes in there will be verified on the device with the on-screen approach. Or you can use the SD card approach that mainly Coldcard uses with the BSBTs. And the third approach would be using QR codes. So imagine your wallet could display, your wallet on the desktop could display a bunch of QR codes. You read those QR codes with your hardware wallet, and this would kind of bypass the whole need for a cable or even connect it to your computer. This is kind of a nice approach, but also has problems. I mean, there were bugs in QR code libraries where actually reading a QR code could produce a buffer overflow. Maybe, in the worst case, could make you could root your device in the worst case. So I think QR code is not safe from any types of vulnerabilities, but it would be a cool way how you could air gap your device.
Yeah, so just to expand on that, I think psychologically air gapping your device by only reading QR codes and displaying QR codes is a nice concept. But I think in the end, it's just a different way to transmit data from your computer to a device. And so you still need to transfer the same types of data, which is what is the transaction, how much do you want to send, and things like that. And so a lot of the attack vectors, having a QR code modality, it doesn't really change these attack vectors. And so it's still the same data. And so it's how the microcontroller on the hardware wallet interprets that data, which is where the attack would come in. And that would be the same if you're using a USB cable or a QR code reader. Of course, a big difference then is the bandwidth. And so a QR code reader has a lot lower bandwidth than a USB. So you don't need too much bandwidth for hardware wallet transactions. Sometimes you do, but usually that's not really an issue. And so one of the advantages there, I guess, would be time-wise, a bit less time to actually perform an attack. But in the end, a lot of the attacks are similar.
So I know that I'm not going to name any names, but a very important person for a very important hardware wallet manufacturer said that users can basically just go on eBay and buy used hardware wallets and they're going to be safe. Are you going to make any kind of recommendations like that?
Never. You want to go into depth?
Yeah, I think the supply chain risk is just too high. Yeah, it's very complicated, but I would definitely not recommend to buy second-hand hardware wallets.
Yeah, so it brings up the concept again that given enough time and money, anything can be hacked. Also, things can be forged. So you can make imitations of different hardware wallets. I think that happened to Trezor in the past. And so buying a used hardware wallet on eBay or whatever, all of these different types of attacks are possible. A forged device, some kind of modified device, or a pre-set up wallet with different seeds, reprogrammed device. It's quite. I wouldn't risk it. So I mean, for small amounts of funds, it's probably okay, but I just wouldn't trust that for holding any significant amount of funds.
I just love the skepticism in this space.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it also brings up the question, what means secondhand? I mean, obviously we think it's like somebody has used it before, but it's also the question, what if you buy it from a reseller? So it's getting into the same direction. Obviously it's not, because the product is still sealed in some ways, but what means sealed? It's up to easy to reseal or not. But I think we've did the max we could to make sure the product cannot be spoofed in any ways in terms of loading different firmwares. It's impossible with our hardware wallet, and it should be very easy to visually inspect that it is okay. But again, it's just impossible.
We can't say impossible. Just try to make it very, very hard.
All right, so we mentioned purchasing the BitBox02. Where can people listening to this get the device?
So go to our website, ShiftCrypto.ch. You'll see a shop link, and you can buy our device there, along with some interesting little accessories also. Also, that link will bring you to a different list of resellers we have around the world. And so an advantage of a reseller is a bit cheaper shipping costs if you can find one in your own area. But yeah, check out our website, ShiftCrypto.ch.
Do you also sell devices at conferences that you attend or in places where people can buy without signing up with their address and full name for the delivery?
Yes. So at the conferences we attend, we do sell a limited number of devices. Also, if you're in Switzerland, one of our resellers has set up an anonymous way to purchase devices, so you can check that out through our reseller links.
All right. I think the last question belongs to Staticus, and I did.
Okay, this is surprising.
Posted a GIF on Twitter and asked if this is a tag team or versus podcast mode.
I didn't see the GIF, so I can't comment. Staticus is one of our team members, for those not aware.
Yeah, he works on the BitBox project. No, BitBox.
The BitBox base. He's the project lead on that. Yeah.
Node.
So I'm sorry, Aesthetics, I don't get the question.
I'm going to show it to you because he also asked if the winner gets the Lambo. And I'm not sure if you saw the title card, but it has a retro 1980s Lambo in the middle. You probably don't spend much time on Twitter, which is possibly for the best.
Well,
Possibly.
Jonas is on there. Jonas is on there a lot.
Indeed.
All right. I don't have any more questions for you. If you have anything to add before we wrap up this interview.
No, it was a pleasure talking to you, Vlad. It was great getting to know you at the last conference. And so thank you very much for this opportunity. Look forward to talking with you a lot in the future also.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vlad, for doing this. Appreciate it.
We said it at the same time, so it must be mutual. So thank you.
Let's hear a few words from the show's sponsors. LXMI is a European cryptocurrency exchange whose name is inspired by Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of wealth, good fortune, and prosperity. It's one of the regulated and legal cryptocurrency exchanges. On LXMI, you can buy bitcoins with most fiat currencies, and you can also do trading with top altcoins. They follow the not your keys, not your bitcoins philosophy with their integrated non-custodial wallet, which helps you manage your own private keys. So if you're into trading, then you don't have to worry about having your crypto frozen by whatever political decisions, since you're empowered to hold and move your coins whenever you wish. It's great to have new players like LXMI that respect your financial sovereignty. LXMI is launching in 2020, and for more information, please check out lxmi.io. If you're not into trading, it's recommended to move your coins to a hardware wallet or some other form of cold storage, and in this episode, you're about to find out why. Please keep in mind that this is just an ad for a sponsor of this show. It's not meant to serve as financial advice, and you're responsible to do your own research before buying anything and act according to your own decisions. Embrace your financial sovereignty with agency and precaution. Hey you! Looking for the simplest way to get started sending Satoshis on the Lightning Network? Then sign up with your social account on BottlePay now. BottlePay is your premium Lightning service for unfairly cheap and effortless Bitcoin payments. It is powerful enough to offer all of the payment features you need, while also being simple enough for no-coiners to understand. No more confusion and headaches. Send Satoshis instantly to anyone on a supported social network in a couple of clicks. Log in today at bottle.li and receive 1,000 free Satoshis to get you started sending and receiving Bitcoins. Follow the steps to become a power user and earn even more. Head over to bottle.li and get started now.